Okay, if we just move into one other topic, which you have spoken a bit about, which is more decentralized future. And I'm going to try to move into and hide my thoughts about this as much as I can. But there is a topic called also like Web 3.0. It's been used in various cases and abused as well. Like 15 years ago, I worked with something called semantic web, which also was called Web 3.0.
I had someone in my lab working on that too. So
awesome.
Or Lassi lab, if I'm not mistaken. Right. Yeah.
But also now we have a new, I would say, semantic for the term of Web 3.0, more speaking about blockchains, more speaking about having a decentralized type of service that is moving away from the big tech giants that today are like monopolizing the big services and in some way trying to move the ownership. I think someone phrased it like back to the user or back to smaller companies. What's your thoughts about Web 3.0 in this aspect?
In principle, I agree with the sentiment behind the movement, which is, if it's my data and it's my life, I should be in charge of that and not someone else.
Right.
In practice, I have noticed that for any solution or system or technology to thrive, there has to be some form of business model behind it.
Yes.
And what I think we haven't quite figured out in the Web 3.0 movement, which I know very, very little about, just to be clear, I did read a little bit, is what are the incentives for different people to actually maintain and evolve solutions that are broadly used, that will lead to these kind of decentralized outcomes. Yeah. And until I believe we can crack that one, I think it will not really materialize because, to be very honest, for all that we as technology people are worried about data and who owns this and the big tech giant, many people actually just want to have free email, want to have free social media, want to have free whatever, and deep down accept the fact that if something is free, you are the product, right? Yeah. So that there is a trade-off that takes place that, to be honest, for most people is fine. Yeah. They don't really care that much. And that's the other big thing. How do we take it from the early stages of the adoption curve through the chasm to an early majority? And that means seamless adoption, very low effort, very clear value proposition for the early majority. It's not enough to have very strong political views on that these big tech companies should not own my data. That's not good enough. Yes. It's not enough to drive the big adoption. That's what I believe.
Really well phrased, I think. And sometimes, you need to have at least some way to commercialize something if it's going to be of some large-scale use in some way. If you just fragment it down to everyone not having the power to develop something great, then no one will take the lead in doing so. Then it will be hard to do that. But I still hope, there are examples to the opposite, like the open source movement is working surprisingly well, like Wikipedia and whatnot. There are exceptions to this rule. So,
but open source, you know that very large tech companies very actively support open source movements, typically because one of their competitors has a commercial solution and they rather have that commercial solution be disrupted by an open source one, and they happily invest in open source in order to disrupt one of the businesses of one of their competitors. So we should not overestimate the altruistic nature of everything that happens in these industries.